Maseches Bava Metzia. Which daf are we on? Please remind me. Are we Nun Bava Amud Beis? No. We're new. No. Nun Bava Amud Beis. Nun Vav Umid Beis. Boy what? No. Say no to drugs. Boy say yes to Torah. Say no to Yetzer Hara. So this year's Leinish Masav Imar Menachem and Akiva Heni Reisha Basit Basimchon and Yitzchok. So Bas Moshe and Ruth Bas Shalom and Lefuas Chana Bat Sima. Nina Chai Bas Gil Rochel Aviva Bas Dvar Basoch Shachol Yisrael. You look good this morning, Rabbi Yosef. Look all young and variety. Yeah. Okay, let's record. We are recorded. Ooh. Okay. Boy Rovi. So what did we learn yesterday? Boy Rovi is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 10 or more lines from the bottom of the narrow lines. Boy Rovi, the line starts with the word nami, and then boy Rovi. Yeah, those who watch me in the screen can see. What is today's topic? We spoke in the Mishnah about things that have no oino, which means some things you can overprice to no end, or so we think at the moment. These are 4 things. What are the 4 things? Karka, because it's learned from the pasuk, right? Avodim are almost always compared to very good to karkos, shtar and hekdeshos. Hekdesh also there's no overpricing, underpricing. We're going to dig deeper into hekdesh today, but before there's other stuff, other things to do the karkos that are unique. Karka doesn't have kefel. If you stole someone's karka, eved, b'chulei, you don't pay double. Also, there's no shvuah. Shvuas shoimrin and other shvuas don't apply to karka. We'll discuss that later too. Now, the question is, listen to the very, very good news. I don't know if you remember, I kept telling you something which I knew from my early years when I was young and pretty. I always knew that the reason why I know bekarkos, and I said it to you a few times, it's because a karka, a person would pay a lot of money, even more than the market price, in order to get his prized piece of land. Sometimes people pay very, very, a lot. As I told you, let's say you're a Belzer Chosid, you'd pay a lot of money to buy an apartment right next to the Belzer Rebbe, right? Because for you, that's really worth a lot of money. And I know people who sold for, a very tiny apartment, they sell it for him, it's important. As a Belzer Chosid, that's like winning the lottery to get an apartment right next to the center. Now, but then we didn't see a makor for that, right? Here we don't say that. Here we saw in the Gemara just a pasuk. Why? Because it says miyad amitecho. It's not a reason. It's tam. Xeris akosuv yad liad, right? It's opposed to a piece of land which is not held by your hand, and that's why it doesn't apply to it. Okay, fine. Now, Mechavrusa and other people in Kola told me you're wrong because we don't see here that idea that I said. We just see Xeris akosuv. Baruch Hashem for Otzar Chochma. My wife who bought me Otzar Chochma a few years ago. There is a shita in the Rishonim in Bava Basra Daf Samechalef from the base. Samechalef from the base discusses over there what would be the halacha if someone is unclear about the size of the house that he bought. He says, I'm buying the house in so-and-so street, yeah? And we're not sure if he means the smaller version of the house or the bigger version. In other words, the whole thing or the whole story there. The Gemara asks the question, well, let's see by the money. Yeah, domi modim. In other words, if the deal was for $1 million, then let's assume it's half the house. If it's 2 million, it's the entire house. So the Gemara says no, enonola korkos. Some Rishonim learn that enonola korkos means, and that's how the Rashbam learns, that because people would pay anything for a karka, that's why enonola korkos. Just like I said, the pasuk, they explain the pasuk. The pasuk is being explained that because people would pay anything for karka, therefore there's no ino. Other Rishonim argue, the Ramban, the Rashba, they say no, it's there's no reason for it. Stam. The Torah decided the no doesn't apply to karka. So that's machlokes Rishonim. Now we can continue. Boy Rove. Rove asks the question, Baruch Rove Choinim. Boy Rove. Chitin v'zron b'karka. Let's say a person, he took some kernels, seeds of wheat, and he, how do you say in the past, sowed them? He sowed them in the land, planted, he sowed them in the land, but they didn't yet take root. I think it takes 3 days for chitim or a few days. They're in the ground, and in his mind, he planted them there, and he wants them to stay there for the next year until they grow and be big kids. But physically speaking, those kernels are in the ground and they did not yet take root. You can take them out and eat them if you're really hungry. Yeah. Mahu. How would you define those kernels of wheat? They're in the ground. There are two sides here to the question. Yesh le'mayno or en le'mayno. Let's say somebody wants to sell you those wheats, and now they're planted in the ground, and there's a no involved. How is there a no involved? The Gemara is going to explain later. But the question is, does a no apply, or doesn't it apply to those kernels of wheat or seeds or whatever that are in the ground? What are the tutz-dodim? The Gemara is very long this year. The Gemara explains to us what are the sides on each direction. On one hand, you can say, Keman de shadyan bekad damian. It's as if they are staying stationary in a flower pot, in a jug. It's as if they're in a jug. The fact that they're in the ground does make a difference. Physically speaking, they didn't yet take root. They're just there physically. They're lying in the ground, just like it's lying on your table, lying in your case. And therefore they're considered to be what? Metaltalin. I don't have to translate metaltalin anymore. They are metaltalin. I know applies. They're like socks, shoes, computers, and I don't know what, and tissues. Yeah, there's a no applies. Or dilma, or maybe no. But linu al gav ara, or maybe you can say no. In his mind, they're already mevutal. They're already, in English you call it, it's annulled to the ground. It's already part of the ground because he doesn't view that as something that should be taken out. He wants them to stay there, say forever. He wants them to stay there an entire year until they grow up, right? He wants to be mevatel and leave them there for good, right? He doesn't want to take them out, and therefore, maybe they're part of the ground. If they're part of the ground, then the no doesn't apply. That's a question. Are they still metaltalin? Do they maintain the status of metaltalin, or are they already considered part of the ground because they are in the ground and are meant to stay there forever? These are the two sides. Practic more now. Hechidami. What exactly? How could there be oino in those chitim that are stuck in the ground? What exactly is the story here? We're not talking here about selling chitim, right? We're not talking. It's a person who, that we have to explain here. Yeah, a person sowed the chitim in the ground. I assume the ground belongs to a customer, and he's a gardener. Yeah, who's zoreh the chitim. He sells the chitim, or maybe sells you the karka with the chitim. But he's selling you not the chitim alone and not the karka alone. He's selling you the karka with the chitim inside. There's some kind of oino, some kind of overpricing regarding the chitim. How does that work exactly? Yeah, he's not selling anyone separately. Echidami, what's the reality here? How would we have a situation here of what? Of the, how to call it, the oino? Echidami, how is that? If you want to say the following case, he said, what ihu? If he said, the one who's selling you the chitim, or the song, I'm sorry, the computer's giving me a hard time all the time. If he says, I threw in it, I'm the gardener, I'm the seller, I'm selling you the chitim or the karka improved with chitim, and he says, I threw in it, I sowed in it 6, the also sahadi, and then witnesses came, the amri, and they say, the loshada ba'el chamisha. Let's say, yeah, Adim came, witnesses came and said that he L-I-E-D, he lied. He only sold 5 and not 6. Is that called oino, or is that called something else? What did we say yesterday? Now you'll appreciate what is it? It's a straight line. Now let the Gemara say it and the more lom dish away. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going crazy with the computer's giving me a hard time. Frag the Gemara, V'omer Rove said, Kol dovo shebamida v'shebamishkal v'shebaminyan. Any change of reality, when you change a reality, meaning you're lying regarding mida, size of length, let's say when you sell, let's say fabric, yeah, but mishkal, which is weight, you say it's 5 kilos, and really it's 480, yeah, b'shebaminyan, you say here you have 10 apples, you go home and you say, no, it's 9 apples, right? Then afilu pochot mikdei oino choizer. Oh, if you were cheated outright in the store, and it's less than a 6 difference. In other words, the guy said, I'm selling you 6 apples, 7 apples, and really you count them only 6, right? We explained extensively yesterday, and everyone agreed to that. That is not called oino. Oino is not overpricing, underpricing, which is true but unfair, which is a whole different machluka in Torah. This is outright lie. right? And therefore, even less than oino, I can change the whole thing, change the whole deal, and say this is like mekachtos. You are a liar. Well, you don't have to say him outright. You're a liar because you're Anglo. You're not going to say to him in his face. But Lamaisa, I don't want to do business with you because Lamaisa, this is all choizer because the mamish lied in numbers. If so, you can't portray that case as oino. If the person outright says, I sold 6 and really there are 5, that's not oino. Maybe the difference in price is the same as oino, but his action was not oino. And therefore, that cannot be the case. Ella must be oino of sowing the karka, planting the karka is different. What's the story? The Omar Yihu, this is interesting. He said, the one who wants to sell you the what's his name, the land with planted, the sowed land, shadoiba kediboilo. He says like this: listen, I'm not giving you numbers. I sowed it as appropriate, as necessary. For my expertise as a gardener, as a farmer, I did a good job. I'm not telling you numbers. Here's a land, and it's sold like you sell an apartment, which is, I don't know, well maintained. I'm selling you a piece of land, plus give me extra. Why? Because I'm giving you also the seeds. I gave you the seeds, and now the seeds are kedeboy. The land is now very well proportionally planted, not too much, not too little. That's what he says. Then later on, we found out, we spoke to experts, we spoke to people, you spoke to your neighbors and your friends. And now you know, no, he didn't do the right job. He put too little. That's called oino, and it's not called lying in numbers. Why? Yeah, that's called oino. I recommend we look at Tosfos. The last Tosfos here is a very, very delicious Tosfos. Look at Tosfos. Chaval Rav Simkin is not here. Likes when we do Tosfos. Yeah, says the Tosfos. The last Tosfos. Yeah. At the end of the day, the Baila Shesh v'lo shadeh lechamisha. At the end of the day, who cares how he phrases his words, right? Let's say the necessary amount is 6, and he was miserly. He only put 5. Yeah, just because he said it in nicer words and it was more vague, why does it make a difference, right? He's still lying. He didn't put enough in the land. The Yeshloimer answers says beautifully. The Moicher, the one who sells the land plus the, or maybe just whatever he sells the land with the seeds. Moide, he admits the Lo Shoda Alehei. He's not lying with numbers. He says, I put 5. I'm not being vague. I put 5. I planted 5. By the way, 5 doesn't mean 5 grains. 5 same, 5 kilos, 5 whatever. Yeah, 5 tons, whatever. And the Omar, he says, the Loibai Lechamisha. I believe that 5 is enough. Yeah. The karkazu, right? That's what he says. In my opinion, 5 is enough. I'm not lying. That's the right thing to do. The karkazu and he says, well, if you properly, and therefore I'm selling you the land for what? As if it was properly sowed, because I believe that's called properly sowed. In the market, there is a price for a properly proportionally well sowed karka, and he says 5 is enough. Yeah, I'm not lying. That's what I hold. Afterwards, you went to all your neighbors and friends, all the farmers around the area, and then tell you, no, that's not enough. The boy shisa, they say, no, it requires 6. That's how you know, right? Because he's not making a factual lie. He's telling you, he's open with you. Just like the guy who's overpricing, he's not lying. He openly tells you, he's half lying, but he's not saying what other people are charging. But he says, this kosher phone by me, 800 shekels. And it's a really, really good kosher phone. Yeah. Other people sell for 600. That's already, it's not objective, it's subjective. And that's what's going on over here. He says, I sowed the field, and he tells you the number, and he believes that's called properly well planted. And when you find out later, you go to the other neighbors and friends and all the other people in the market, and they tell you, no. We believe that in this land, in this kind of environment, in our village, the way we sow normally, it's a subjective thing. In our norm, in our society, this kind of land requires 6 and not 5. And therefore, because it's subjective and not objective, that's called oino, and it's not called a straight line. And the question remains. And we're back to the question. Last narrow line. Yesh loimoino or en loimoino. Again, the question remains. So now we explain how oino would apply theoretically, but does halacha recognize it as oino or not? Keman deshadi bekada damin v'yesh loimoino. Do you view those kernel of wheat as if they are a separate entity, metaltalim, that happen to be in the ground, but they can be taken out any given moment, and therefore they're like in the kad? What's a kad? It's as if they are, look, it's as if they're in the cud over here in the jug. They're just a separate metaltalin, and therefore I know it applies to them. And give me back what? Give me back the difference. And I'm claiming I'm going to take you to Beis Din. Or maybe, but linu agav ara, or maybe really they are misbatel. They are now to the ground. They're part of the ground already. Because in his mind, in his mind, he wants to leave them there for good, and therefore it's part of the ground. Part of the ground. There's no inobekarkois. Now, another question of the same color and shape, another question of the same style, second wide line, nishboin alen or nishboin alen. Can I force my friend to take shvua over those chitim that were sown but not yet, didn't yet take root? Can I make him take a shvua or not? Mechlekes Rishonim, which shvua are we talking about? So first of all, there's a rule that says, ein nishboin ala karkos, as we said before. What does it mean? It can either be a shomer or it can be a moide b'miktzas. Says Rashi moide b'miktzas. Let's say I gave my friend, the gardener, 6, what's the name? I gave my friend, it's a very, very easy case to understand. I gave my friend, the gardener, 6 kilos, I don't know, 6 whatever ounces, 6 bags, of what? Of zroim to sow in my field, in my garden. And then I suspect him that he only planted 5. And where's the 6th one? I'm scared it's in his garden. I think he cheated me, baktana, and he took 1 out of the 6. We talk about 6 all the time. And then he says, well, it was 5.5. So we're arguing about 1 kilo, 1 bag. And he says, half the bag I sowed by you and half I didn't. He's a moide b'miktzas. What do you do to a person of moide b'miktzas? I know you know. I just wanted to say it because I'm tired of talking. I know you know. Chayav shvua. I know you know. I'm not testing you. I'm just like, I want to take a break. Chayav shvua. That's every child knows. The beginning of the Masechta. That's a question. If you view those kernels of seeds that are sown in the ground as what is part of the ground, you cannot force him to take shvua. But if you say that they are still considered as separate, as metaltalin lying in the kad katan, then he may take shvua, and I can force him and take him to Beis Din, and he'll have to take an oath to shvua that really he sowed that what he's saying is true, and he sowed 5.5, and the other half is going to give me back. So that's the same question again. End of second line. Are they considered as lying in the jug as a separate entity as metaltalin, and shvua applies to them? Or Dilma, or maybe Batlinu Agav Ara, maybe they're already called misbatel to the land. I don't like to say annulled every time. They're like mevutal, batel, they're already part of the ground, secondary to the ground. Benish Boy in the land, they're part of the ground. By the way, the Ritva argues, the Ritva says you can have another case of Shavua. What's the other case? The only 3 places in the Torah when the person is Chav Shavua. Shema Yisrael, Shavua Shomrim, Moed Miktzas, and Edechod. Shomrim, says the Ritva, Shomer. Let's say I told the guy, I sowed my garden yesterday with nice fresh seeds. Okay. And they are freshly sown, freshly there in the ground. And I went to Chul and I said to a person, please look after my garden. What is he? The Shomer, Chinam, Socher, I'm not going now to that, whichever one. And all of a sudden I see that somebody stole it. And you see that, some nice people, they went and they dug out all the expensive seeds. And then I confront him. And I say, be nishbadi, you're not posher, mister. Yeshomer chinam, swear to me you're not posher. I didn't look at your smartphone the whole time while they were here. Can I force him to take a shvua or not? That's a question. If they're metaltalin, if they're viewed as metaltalin, those freshly planted ones, I may force him to take a shvua. But if the judge is part of the ground, then I cannot force him to take a shvua. Get it? It's getting better. It's sinking into the ground, right? It's the same question again and again. Now we come to the whiteboard. For the whiteboard. It's not even, I didn't even draw the picture. Now comes the final question of the same style, of the same nafkamina. Okay, I'm trying. Okay. So, right, that when you buy something in America, you buy a wheat product, not wheat, whatever, any pastry, wheat products in America. What does it say in the real Choshvech Sherim? Yoshon, right? Yoshon. That's what's written in the Torah. So why? Because there's Nisr in the Torah to eat Chodosh. What's Chodosh? New wheat or barley, new grains, new cereals are not allowed to be eaten. What does it mean? New? Okay. I'm going to draw the picture now while you talk, and I will pause the recording. Right. Fine. Instead of giving many introductions, okay, this is Pesach, this is another Pesach, Pesach, Tafshin Pei Beis, Pesach Tafshin Pei Gimel. So Pesach, when you say Pesach, women get hysterical because it's 2 months time is Pesach. But Pesach, besides being also bechometz and and a whole cleaning spree, Pesach also means what? The second day of Pesach, in Tes Zayin Nisan, is when you bring the Omer. You bring the Omer, and what happens when we bring the Omer? All the wheat and barley v'chulei that was chulin, not a Beis Hamikdash, that is in the market, was not allowed to be eaten before. Now you're allowed to eat it. Now, what do you mean all the new? What's the cutoff point? We're going to see this now. Everything will be explained very clearly. Actually, I must admit, I had a few fakers about this cycle of Chodosh because a lot of people get confused about it. And this Gemara now actually gave me much, much more clarity than I ever had. So I hope he'll do the same to you. Good morning, Baruch. Yeah, now, yeah. Oimer, we are in the fourth line from the bottom of the page. Oimer, what's an Oimer? You bring the Minchas Oimer in Beis Hamikdash, right? The Oimer is the Mincha, a korban, a meal offering, a public one brought in Beis Hamikdash. I talk like a nice art scroll boy. You bring an Oimer to Beis Hamikdash, yeah, the Kohanim on behalf of everyone, and then Oimer Matiran, or Ein Oimer Matiran. Would the Oimer brought this year make those wheat? What kind of wheat are we talking about? Let's say the wheat that is in the ground, right, but didn't yet take root. Root here means it took root. Let's say it's Pesach Tafshin Pei Beis, and let's say right before Pesach, yeah, if it took root, yeah, as we're going to see, if it took root, let's say in Adar, Adar is a month before Pesach, and it took root then, but wasn't yet harvested. It's still in the ground, and when it hits Pesach, it's still nice and golden and flowing, swaying in the field, but it's still mutter. Yeah, I didn't know that, to be honest with you. I mean, I knew it, but I forgot it. Yeah, the Omer allows it. Yeah, I know it's a surprise. The Korban Omer in Pesach, the Omer over here allows you to eat it, and this is also Omer. Yeah, that Omer over here, once it took root in Tafshin Pei Beis, then Pesach Tafshin Pei Beis allows everyone to eat those once they're harvested. Yes. Now, the question is, what happens if it was planted a few days before Pesach? It was planted, there's a hole in the ground planted, but didn't yet take root. Yeah, that's our story. Would the Omer allow it or not allow it? Let's see it nice and slow. No questions for sure, because the more I'll explain, Be'ezras Hashem, all will be very clear. Be'ezras Hashem, let's just get it clear. Hey Chidami, what exactly is this story? Ide Ashrush, if, as I told you, they did take root before Pesach of that year, Nina, it says Mefurish in the Mishnah what the halacha is, as we'll see soon. Ideloi Ashrush, also Tnina, if they did not yet take root, which is more what we're talking about, it's also written Mefurish. What's Mefurish? That none, listen to the Mishnah. Im hishrishu, what's lashrish? If it took root, became part of the ground, koidem la'omer, before the korban omer was brought, which is over here, the omer is brought here. Let's make it clear. That's the red nakuda. The omer over here was brought. Then omer matiran. The omer allows it. Yeah, once the omer is brought, you're allowed to eat even though you will only harvest it here. This one over here, it took root in Tafshin Pei Beis, and then it's still growing in the field, in the ground. And now the Omer came, you brought the Omer of that year, even though it's still growing in the field, so is mashma. And you kotzer it later, you only harvested here, that was mutar by last year. Wow. You're allowed to eat it based on the fact that the Omer met it, when it was what? When it was after the Hashrosho. It was in the ground. Ve'im lav asurin ad shiyavoy Omer haba. If they did not take root, let's say they only took root over here, yeah? If it took root, it started here somewhere, but took root over here, then you missed the boat. You missed this year, right? You took root in Tafshin, after Pesach of Tafshin Pei Beis, wait until Pesach Tafshin Pei Gimel. If you took root over here, and then you harvest, let's say over here, yeah, then the next Pesach will be the cutoff point. Okay, if so, what's the question? In other words, so our question is not even a question. You know, what's our case? Our case is it was planted here but not take root. That's all vort, right? It didn't take root. Ta 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 ta. It took root only when after Pesach. Then what's the question, right? Of course that it's not mutter. It does not become permitted by this year's Omer. That's a Mishnah. What do you want for my life? Just read the Mishnah, please. Why are you bothering me? That's a question. Answers the Gemara. And I'll tell you something before we read the Gemara to avoid confusion because I want to help you. And that is that there's a difference between the seed themselves that you take out of the ground to eat. What's the story over here? We're talking about the seeds themselves, right? There's a difference between the seed themselves and the produce that will come out of them in a few months when become big children. You sow one seed in the ground, then you have an entire wheat that contains many, many grains. That's the difference here. Now let's read and everything will be clear. And if not, I'll answer questions. Answers the Gemara. Lo tzricha. The following, I need the question. It's not a stupid question. There is a question here. The chatzdinu, those what's the names? Those grains, those kernels, they were chatzdinu. They were harvested when? They were harvested here. Before Pesach Tafshin Pei Beis, yeah, they were harvested. Yeah, the actual, when they were harvested, I don't know, in Hanukkah. It's usually not the case, but they were harvested sometime during a year, and here you have a kernel. When that kernel is harvested, yeah, then already, then Chatzivas end, then it should be allowed to be eaten next Pesach. If I leave it in my cupboard, if I leave it in my granary, and then Pesach comes, is it allowed? Of course, yes. But that's not what I did. What did I do? Look, Papi, I planted it. Yeah, I'm not into instant gratification. I planted the grain in the ground. I planted it before the Omer came, pretty soon, pretty near to the Omer time. That's when I planted it. The Asalei Omer, the Omer came and went, meaning Tes Dain Nisan with the Omer actually came. The Cholifi Levayu came and went by. V'loy ishrush kodim la'omer. They did not take root until after the Omer. They only took root in the middle of Chol HaMoed. They work in Chol HaMoed. Yeah, it's more or less what we said till now. Nothing so far is so earth-shaking. Elamai. So what's the kunz? Mau. So what's the question? Question is like this: Ma lemin katu meichal minayu. Can I now? Let's say over here. Let's say it only took root here, and here it didn't yet take root. Let's say one day after the Omer, it did not yet take root. It's still in the ground. And now I want to eat it. On Chol HaMoed, I want to eat it. Yeah, let's say it's Kosher Pesach. That's the question. And let's repeat and then I'll explain more. Keman the Shadian Bekad Adam, I'm reading in the Gemara Nun Zayin. At that stage, are they considered like here? Are they considered as if they're out of the ground and therefore they became permitted by Omer? Because regular free wheat that's in the shelf is for sure being mutter when the Omer hits it. So even though it's in the ground, it's viewed as a separate metaltalin, and I may enjoy and eat it because it was permitted by the Omer that just came a few days ago. Or maybe we say no. We say, I'm sorry, honey, but once you placed it in the ground and your intention was not to take it out, you changed your mind. Your idea was to plant it there forever and ever. And therefore, at that stage, we say, what? That's it. Why isn't mutter in the ground? Why not? Explains Rashi, and this is the one point which is missing, a big point missing, and that is like this. The question, the chiddush is, when we talk about, when I planted this here, yeah, and the hashrosha was here, right? Now, and let's say I harvested here, okay? Here I harvested our guy, okay? It's the same grain. I took it from the cupboard, planted it here, no hashrosha. Hashrosha was post the Omer, and then it grew. Oh, what a beautiful wheat all over. And then I harvested. For sure, those may not be eaten. No questions. I'm not allowed to touch them with a pitchfork until next Pesach. That's not a question, of course, because hashrosha, their hashrosha happened when? After the Omer. So of course the Omer doesn't help it. Now that makes our question much stronger. Very beautiful. How do you view this grain, not those that grew from the ground half a year later, after post the Omer? That stuff that was in the ground before Omer stayed in the ground free without taking root after the Omer. That's a heck of a question. That's a beautiful question. do you connect it to last year? Do you allege it to last year when it was nice and free and not in the ground? It was in the cupboard, it was in the cad, it was in the jug, and here it's still in the jug. It's still in the jug. It didn't take root, and therefore it still belongs to this Omer and was mutar the Omer, and I'll eat it now. It's like taking out of the cupboard after the Omer allowed it. Or do we say, no, it's bottled to the ground? Bottled to the ground. It's part of the big wheat. The big wheat which took place when the rooting took place only after the Omer. Then I'm not allowed to eat it because it's part of the bigger wheat, part of the ground. And the Chodesh did not allow them. Only the next Chodesh will allow it. So now, Rak Rega Tavakasha. Do we say they're like in the jug and Omer allows it? Because Lamaisa, they're not yet in the ground, really in the ground with the roots, and therefore they belong to the post Omer, which permitted them. Or Dilma, or maybe Batlino Agavara, or maybe they're part of the ground. By the way, Rashi doesn't say like me. Rashi says Batlino Agavara means they're just part of the ground. Ground is not mutar be'omer. You can't allow ground in Omer. It's just not even part of the wheat. Or we can say maybe it's part of next year's wheat. Teku. After all that, all these questions are teku. So those wheats or those kernels of barley of whatever that were sowed into the ground. What's the halacha? We don't know. It affects us regarding oino, regarding shvua, and regarding the oimer. Then remains a question, and we can continue now, unless you have questions for me. I don't know the halacha. The next page is Good point. Nowadays in Russia, and I think in America maybe too, I think they plant in the summer and they sow in the summer. That's a problem because when you have wheat over here, right, and it took root over here, then what do you say? This Pesach is going to be materit, right? And that's it. So anything that was nishash here, this Pesach allows it. Now, when you sow something over here, right, in the summer you sow it and then you reap it before. In other words, when you reap it, in other words, no, 1 second. Well, let me explain something. When it was nishrash over here and harvested over here, what do we say? It's all kosher. So the normal wheat, which was sown in the winter and harvested after Pesach, that's a normal cycle, is no problem. So most wheat in the world should be okay. There's a shrosha before Pesach. Pesach came and allows everything is kosher, and now you harvest it, right away you can eat the whole thing. America, Russia, Israel, or Chul. Mashe'enken, when you have something that is planted in the post-Pesach, spring, and harvested before the next Pesach, and is already on the shops now, that's a problem. It's been nishrash and niktzah and being sold before Pesach came. And that's a problem which nowadays exists in Yoshan more than in the past. Right, very nice. And we are at this point, we are coming to a place. There are 3 statues of the father, the grandfather, the son. You're not allowed to open your mouth. Okay, weiter. Says the Gemara. Omarove. Now we're coming to the part of the sugya, which is not really hard, but you have to concentrate. I would like to appease you and whitewash you before a hard sugya. It's really not difficult. Okay, let's continue. Omarove. Omar Chasa. Boy Rabbi Ami. It really doesn't start hard. It's really easy. Rabbi Ami had a question. Oino ein lahem. Let's talk about karka, okay? Although Rashi says it's all 4, let's talk now about karka and its friends. Avodim shtoros. What does it mean oino ein lahem? Anybody? Oino ein lahem? If I sold you the karka, let's say the karka is worth 5 million, and I sold you for 5.5, and you come back to me and you say, why did you overprice me? 5.5, maybe mechila. 6, you sold me chutz of 6 million instead of 5 million. What did I tell you? And I know there's no oino in karkos. The Mishnah said the words of oino is not a lie. It's an apartment in amazing condition. Everyone else sells it for 6, and for 5, and I sell it for 6. I know I'm overpriced. The halacha says not to overprice. In my Shiur Amud Yomi, we were taught overpricing doesn't apply to karka. Go home and that, no, and nothing happens, and the deal stays, right? That's the basic information here. Bitul mekach yesh lahem or en lahem? Oh, what would be when it gets to the stage of bitul mekach? Everybody in the room remembers, but I just want to refresh your memory. When it comes to metaltalin, if I sold you socks and shoes or computers or tangerines, And there are three levels, right? If I overpriced it in less than a sixth difference, then nothing happened. Punkt a sixth, then what? Then it exists, the mekach stays, but you have to get back the extra money. But if it's more than a sixth, I sold an apartment of let's say six for 7 point something, more than six, then we said when it comes to metaltalin, broken deal. The deal is not on. Bitol mekach, it's like as we compare it usually to mekach tos. In other words, the difference price is so high when it comes to socks, shoes, and metaltalin. We say what? If it's more than a six, how much more than a six? Either prut or an isar, right? Then the whole deal is canceled. Ha, shvindla, blah, blah, blah. I view it already as post oino. It's a no plus. It's mekach tos. It's unthinkable, and enachinami halacha would support you. Such overpricing. That's to where in metaltalin. Here comes the question regarding karka. That's a whopping question. Boy Rabbi Ami, I'm reading again. Oino en lehem. If let's say the lie, not the lie, the overpricing was up to a six, yeah. Instead of let's say 6 million, you sold it for 6 point almost 7, yeah, just the six. The seder, nothing happened. Bitul mekach yesh lehem or en lehem? Question mark. Let's say the overpricing was so high, more than a six. Is there bitul mekach or isn't there bitul mekach? There's a beautiful Rashi here. It's sweeter than anything I've ever seen in my life. And although it's very late, and although I'm lachatz, I will read this Rashi, and you all read it with me. Yes, because Rashi explains the two tzdodim. Why would we say again? I'm just before Rashi. The question in the cold definition translation to English is as follows: if the overpricing was too much, was more than a six, or more than a six than the normal already, do we say, hey, mister, there's a limit. I'm sorry, honey. You sold me instead of 6 million, 8 million, 7.5 million? Yesh gvul. At this point, we say, even by karka, the whole deal is cancelled. Or do we say, no, ain't an all karkas? There are no questions whatsoever now. From now, you are in, I don't know where you are, Soviet Union 100 years ago. Yeah, no. Yeah, then what? Then we say that I lost train of thought. Do we say that at that point the difference in price is so high that the deal is cancelled, or do you say no? I know, is I know. Even if I sell you twice as much, no end to it, which is also a question of Tosfos. Rashi, you have to see this Rashi, unbelievable experience. Rashi is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, about 10 lines from the narrow lines, from the top of the narrow lines. Yesh lehen or en lehen. Explains Rashi the two tzdodim in a very lomdish way. You think it's not Rashi, you think it's a Briskerov talking. Mi amrinan, shall we say, me'al toinu hu de'imut? Yeah, we say that a karka, right, is out of the question of what? Of oino, because it says al toinu doesn't apply. Ve'olav bichlal oino, that's not called oino, my friend. When you overpriced so much, it's not oino, ela mekach tosu. It's a mekach tos. It's poshet a mekach tos. In other words, it's not a lot of oino. It's a new entity called mekach tos. I'll ask you a question. I ordered, let's say, order online a white shirt, and came what, a pink shirt with golden polka dots. Of course, it's just the wrong product. Do we view super overpricing not as very much oino? It's not quantitative in oino. It's so bad that it's already considered mekach tos, which is what? Mekach tos. It's already canceling the deal. And it always was also by metaltalin, oy dilma, or maybe not. Maybe it's not so bad. Kevan de lav double shebamidahu. What was the form of lying? He didn't lie to him about size. V'lo atie b'dibure. He didn't say anything wrong, right? The guy who's doing oino is not a liar. He's an unfair guy. He's not a liar. Therefore, kishar din oino, it still stays on the spectrum of oino. Because at the end of the day, the dealing was very, very, very much overpricing. But Lamais, he didn't lie. He didn't hide the fact that there's Nezilah. He didn't hide the fact that there is a disgusting neighbor next door. He didn't hide anything. He's just overpricing, and it's very, very much overpricing. It's just quantitative. It's not qualitative. And that's the question. Do you view super overpricing as same old overpricing but more? Overpricing doesn't apply to karka. I can give the karka, instead of 6 million, 10 million. Because that's what I want. My karka is good. Go jump. Or do we say no? Once it's above, the 6, then Chachamim view it as what? It's a whole different story. It's a different planet. It's a different Maisa of such overpricing is so not in line with the market, that's considered already as mekach tos. That's Rashi. Tosfos and many other Rishonim. Okay, we're not doing Amud Yomi today. So Tosfos and other Rishonim say that even a latzad that sorry mekach tos does not apply, and you can overprice. Says Tosfos there's a limit of 100% difference. Let's say the karka is worth 4 million, you can sell it up to 8 million. More than 8 million, there's a gvul that's called super overpricing. That already for sure you can change, and that's Shittas Tosfos. And we said the svara was, and Tosfos is maramis to the svara, which I said all the time, and that is the fact that at some point people are willing to pay a lot for a house. That's the idea. Your house, you just made aliyah, you always dreamt your entire life since you were a kid in school, I'm going to live in that nice house in Nachlaot with a nice, next to a Sephardi shul, next to a thing, exactly, a restaurant, whatever. You had the dream. Oh, your dream home came true. Don't believe it. That's mamish the dream you're fantasizing day and night. Honey, we're buying this house for double the price. But more than double, there's a gvul. That's a Tosfos holds. And that's a question. So let's summarize. What's the question? The question is as follows. The difference between Rashi and Tosfos is just in numbers. Rashi says a 6 more, and Tosfos says 100% more, double more. That's all. But both Rashi and Tosfos explain the Gemara is what? The question is when I overpriced it, do we say what? There's a gvul already, and therefore the mekach will be cancelled. No mekach for you. That's mekach tos. It's like buying a hat instead of shoes. Or do we say no? And an ola karkos would apply until even above 6, or lefi Tosfos up to a half. Now, Omar Rav Chasa, boy Rabbi Yomi, oino en lehem, pitul mekach yesh lehem or en lehem. Omar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman answers the question in a different way. Hadar Omar Rav Chasa. Rav Chasa came later and said something else, Poshit, and he answered the question. Poshit Rabbi Ami, the same Rabbi Ami which you claim asked the question, later on he answered his own question, and he says, oino en lehem, pitul mekach yesh lehem. There's no oino, but there is bitul mekach. Yeah, which means if you really overpriced it, whatever that means, Rashi and Tosfos, if the overpricing was already really bad taste overpricing, then the deal is canceled. It is no deal anymore. That's what we say about houses. In other words, in houses there is bitul mekach. Houses, korkois, avodim, shtor is probably the same. I think I don't know. Now, here we come to the question about the kedeshos. What about hekdesh? Let's give a small introduction here. When we talk about hekdesh, what's the story of hekdesh? Let's say I'm a gizbar, I'm a regular guy, and I have hekdesh item for sale. Is it really for sale, or is there another word for it? Pidyon, right? Let's say my animal has a blemish and it's holy, and therefore, now the blemish is not holy, the animal is kodesh, yeah? Now, you can redeem it for money. You want that nice animal for yourself. The money you give me will become kodesh, and the kedusha will be freed, and now the animal will be chulin. You can have it for your steak tonight. Now, here comes the question regarding hekdeshos. Hekdeshos was the same as karka. Now they're going to possibly go their part ways. Now, it starts, Rabbi Yoina Omar. Rabbi Yoina says, a hekdeshos, and he doesn't continue the sentence. Rabbi Yoina said something about the hekdeshos, which we're going to see soon. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omar Karkois. Rabbi Yirmiyah said the same thing about land. V'tarvayu, both of them, Bishmei Rabbi Yochanan Omu. Now they join forces. Both of them say something on behalf of Rabbi Yochanan. What do they say? Oino en lahem. Oino does not apply to either Kedeshus or Karka, or really both, right? Bitul mekach yesh lahen. Oh, in other words, when it comes to bitul mekach, b'chlekes Rabbi Yoino and Rabbi Yirmiyah, do we say about hekdeshos? Do we say that when it comes to bitul mekach, is there bitul mekach or isn't there bitul mekach regarding hekdeshos? Let me explain what that means. When bitul mekach in hekdesh does mean there's no deal. You can't play with hekdesh. Bitul mekach in hekdesh, I'm saving you a lot of trouble here, by the way. And that is like this. If I, as we mentioned many times before, let's say Tzvi wants to buy my sheep, which has a small blemish, and I was makdish for korban oila. Tzvi wants to have the steak tonight. Will he invite me, please? Of the keves. You like slaughtered keves? I do. So then he buys the thing off me, but it's not regular purchase, right? It's pidyon of the kedusha. Yeah, Tzvi wants to now redeem the kedusha of my sheep. get the sheep to be secular and owned by him, two things together, and I get the money, and the money is now Kodesh. And with that money, I'll have to buy another korban. No questions, no comments, and no faces. I'm sorry to be so rude. We're very much in the middle of the jungle now. And therefore what, please? And therefore what? And therefore what? And therefore, now comes the question. Do we say that ein bitul mekach means what? What did we say about the house? You sell the house for 4 million for 8 million, and maybe that goes. Maybe that's okay, right? That we have such a tzad, a strong tzad, or maybe not, or maybe less than 4. Yes, bitul mekach, ein bitul mekach. We say en le bitul mekach. We pass an en bitul mekach. You can overprice big time with turquoise. When it comes to Kadeshas, the question is like this. Let's say Tzvi gave me, instead of my sheep is worth 2,000 shekels, and Tzvi gave me 3,000 shekels. The 3,000 shekels belong to me and to Hekdesh, and they're holy. And the sheep belongs to him. When it comes to Hekdesh, it means what? That we don't have to match the price to the product B'chlal. Or, and here comes the bigger problem. Mela, this is good. Yad Hekdesh al Alyoina. We all know Hekdesh is the upper hand. The big trouble is going to be now, if you say Ein enola karkos, you mean also means the other way. Do you realize if you sell your house in Ramat Bet Shemesh, which is worth 3 million shekel for 2 million, you can't go back on that? Because Ein enola means both over and underpricing. So what? Let's now copy and paste to Hekdesh. Let's say Tzvi, instead of giving me 2,000 shekels for my sheep, only gave me 1,000. The sheep is redeemed. The sheep is redeemed. And the 2,000 shekels, the 1,000 shekels are mine, although I did not get the fair price, and the sheep already doesn't have the kedusha. That is underpricing hekdesh, but it means what? That really the kedusha went away. That's what bitul mekach means in the kedeshos, and that's the question for hekdesh. Can you underprice hekdesh and give hekdesh 1,000 shekels for a 2,000 shekels animal or anything else, and the redeeming would still work? You all know that we said a few days ago that you can do it. Later on, Hekdesh people will wait around the corner and ask you for the extra money you still owe. Leave that for now. Let's just read the words now. We have 1 more minute for the shiur, and then I'll be able to answer your questions. Now, we had Rabbi Yirmi and Rabbi Yonah. One of them spoke about Hekdesh, one of them spoke about Karka. The Gemara wants to just crystallize and clarify who's against who, as we say in Hebrew. Man de Omar Hekdeshois. The one that says that by Hekdesh there is bitul mekach. What does it mean bitul mekach? That the Hekdesh is not redeemed until paid in full. That's bitul mekach. Kol sheken karkois. Karka all the more so. Why is that? I'm going to explain to you soon. There's a big difference between underpricing karka and underpricing Hekdesh. If you say that Hekdeshois there is Madam Hekdeshois Kol sheken karkois, all the more so on karka. I'll explain soon why. Mandomar karkois, but the one that says only by karka you can overprice. Aval hekdesh loy. Hekdesh you can't say overprice. Hekdesh, which means by hekdesh you may say that even if you paid little, the hekdesh is out. The redeeming is out, and I'll explain it. Let's just quote Shmuel, Kiddush Shmuel, and then we'll explain. Dama Shmuel says Shmuel hekdesh shaveh. Shmuel said the hekdesh item you want to buy from hekdesh is worth money. Money is a lot. It's 100 zuz. It's a colossal amount of money. Shechila al shve pruta, a fraction of the price. Tzvi wants to buy him $1 million sheep for 1 pruta, not buy mitzad your whole purchase, mitzad to redeem the kedusha. Mechulal, it's mechulal. Yes, the kedusha is out, which means by hekdesh, everyone agree. No, by hekdesh they don't all agree. By hekdesh, according to Shmuel, we say, according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, we say that in hekdesh there is no overpricing. Ain't bitul mekach. There's no bitul mekach, which means you gave very little, the deal is on. You gave hekdesh 1 pruta, that's it. It's redeemed. L'chor hekdesh is losing. Yeah, and we say, no, absolutely. Now, I'm going to explain more tomorrow. We're going to go. By the way, there's a chart also. Hopefully, I'll send you the chart today. But this is the beginning of the question again about Hekdesh. I want to explain, I'll explain it tomorrow. Explain tomorrow the mechanism here. Why is it that by Hekdesh we're more noited, we're more inclined to say that it works as opposed to by Karkois? By Karkois, what did we say? We had a question. We're still unsure. When it comes to Karka, if I give it for your 4 million apartment, I give you 2 million, It may work, may not work, right? There is a tzad to say, karka, such overpricing, shigene, four instead of two, you underpriced me, it's a mistake. By hekdesh, says Rashi, hekdesh makes no mistakes. Even people dealing with hekdesh, it's never called a mistake, and therefore this opinion holds by hekdesh, even though it was way, way underpriced, the pruta for $1,000,000, it still works. Of course, the question is why. What does mean hekdesh makes no mistakes? That we're going to explain tomorrow. Okay, and it's machlokas Rabbi Yoina, and with Shmuel, and I wrote the list already of opinions, and I just want to make it better today and send it to you, and hopefully by tomorrow. What? Oh, by hekdesh, it's a dibur. It's technical because hekdesh goes by dibur. What you said is what works, like neder. Thank you. Atzlach Rabba, and I want to hear your. Atzlach, have a good day. Yeah.